So, as I'm sure everyone's heard at this point, HBO are remaking the Harry Potter series less than 2 decades after the original films came out, because what a new ideas anyway. But ultimately, this is, well, on the face of it, regardless of how it was going to turn out, or how it is going to turn out, I was against this from the start. If only for the reason that, as I say, it's not good to be recycling ideas, especially that soon. If you want to do it in 50 years, something like that, maybe an argument could be made. But, it's one of those things that, I remember being a child and, going to see a Harry Potter film became almost an annual occurrence, and you go with your family and, especially those early ones, those Christopher Columbus ones, they had a real warm, childlike, whimsy to them. And then, of course, they got darker as they went on. But fundamentally, one of the things that was most important about the Harry Potter films, and this is me speaking as not the greatest Harry Potter fan, it's fine. I personally wouldn't consider it to be one of the all-time greats, but I would consider it to be the last great story to come from old Britain, to come from old England, that feels like it was a part of the mythos, the continuum of narrative storytelling from the heritage of what had come from before it, in the parochial sense of what life was like for the British Isles, right? You get this in the sense that obviously J.K. Rowling, Scottish author, and but all of the aesthetics of Harry Potter are just dripping with British architectural beauty. Hogwarts is, a very, very elitist. It's like Oxford for wizards. Everything about it is exclusive, and everything about it is based upon the idea of excellence, right? So, and all down to the characters in it. You've got characters like Hermione Granger, and let's face it, growing up in England at school, we all knew a girl who was just like Hermione Granger. That prissy teacher's pet, hot, sort of. But maybe I just have a very cynical reading of her, or maybe my school days were just particularly bad. But also in terms of the enchanted nature of it, that you've got elves and goblins and trolls, and these are all mythical creatures, totally lifted out of the European, pagan European, foundations. And so and one of the most important things, I would say, was the fact that J.K. Rowling, it's long been established now, but when those films were first coming out, J.K. Rowling insisted that they be a British-only cast, that only British actors play the characters. And very famously, this led to the American actor, of course, Robin Williams, not being cast, even though he was obviously a titan of Hollywood at the time. He was barred from being a part of it because he was American, which is, of course, enormously based. However, and so it's interesting to see as well that there's a quote here from the casting director at the time, Janet Hershenson, and she says the only British rule was so important that Robin Williams was even turned down to play Hagrid, and that Robin had called Columbus because he really wanted to be in the movie, but there was this British only edict on it. This says two things. One, that even very early in her career, J.K. Rowling had enough bargaining power over her own creative material,
yes,
to be able to make that demand of Hollywood, and for them to actually go along with it. And it also speaks to, on some level, her loyalty, her love of Britain, that she was interested in Harry Potter feeling as authentically British as possible. And so, naturally, we were all wondering what the next chapter would be like. And then we heard this. HBO says Harry Potter series will benefit from J.K. Rowling's involvement after committing to inclusive, diverse casting. Mamma mia, here we go again.
Go woke, go broke.
Right.
This is just...
Well, honestly, this is one of those times where I don't think it will. No, I think that it will just soldier on for as long as it takes and get through the cycle. Because I feel like, a bit like with Rings of Power, whatever happens, however bad it actually is, it would be a greater defeat to cancel it than it would be to admit that you were wrong and that actually people don't want this. Right? The ideological battle is more important.
Yeah. So
still going on with Rings of Power?
Unfortunately, yes, for now. Although I am trying my best to change that, personally. I've been writing letters every week. Angry letters to Amazon. And so, naturally, the castings started to come out. And this is the most recent one, and what prompted me to do this, that you had the casting of Hermione, Harry, and Ron. And, of course, one of them is a little bit different.
Also, one of them doesn't wear glasses. Isn't Harry Potter supposed to wear glasses?
Well, I'm sure he'll wear glasses for the actual thing. Let's not be petty now. There's more than enough criticism.
That was what I saw when I saw the link.
Yes. And then, of course, so they've essentially race swapped Hermione. Now, obviously, I don't know what this particular girl's heritage is. I don't, is she Spanish? Is she Mediterranean? Is she a little bit Arabic? I can't tell. And I don't know enough about her. And also, fundamentally, I want to make it clear that I'm not going to start dunking and being mean to a small child.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, this is a girl who's grown up in Britain, probably loved the books, grown up with the books, as, her mum probably watched the films and then she's read the books to her, whatever it may be. And as far as this girl's concerned, she probably considers this to be one of the greatest, most magical things that could ever happen to her, that she's going to get to take part in a reimagining of a book series, a series of films that she just loves so much. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to lay blame at a child. I am going to lay blame at the casting director, and I am going to lay blame at J.K. Rowling for licensing it in the first place. But this is not something... So then it obviously comes down to, well, does it really matter so much? Britain's just more diverse than it was back in the 90s when all of this was going on. And so, what is a race swap here and there? And so fundamentally, but it comes down to this thing where even J.K. Rowling herself, and I've just got these slightly out of chronology, but when the stage sequel thing, which I didn't go see, came to the West End, this was the new Hermione. And at the time, J.K. Rowling got very defensive about this casting. She said, I had a bunch of racists telling me that because Hermione turned white, that is, lost colour from her face. This is a passage from the book in Prisoner of Azkaban where it remarks on her face turning white. It says the loss of colour from her face after a shock, that she must be a white woman, which I have a great deal of difficulty with, but I decided not to get too agitated about it and simply state quite firmly that Hermione can be a black woman with my absolute blessing and enthusiasm. And so it's one of those things that, look, if that's the case, and you're saying, look, I had this idea, I conceived of her as white, but I'm fine for her to be black. That's one thing, even though I don't like it. But what I will not tolerate, Ms. Rowling, is you gaslighting us into basically believing that Hermione was always ethnically ambiguous, especially seeing as there are numerous mentions in the text of the fact that she was white, and also the fact that on the front cover of The Deathly Hallows, she was white as well. She was British, because it's one of those things. For an author writing in the 1990s, why would you have conceived of her any other way? Right? It was, Britain was much more homogenous back in the 90s than it is now. And of course, you would have just cast the protagonists of your British novel as actual British people.
I think it goes to the essence of the project, which is that the past isn't real. the present is great and it was always thus, and what you think is the past just isn't real. So there is this ongoing falsification of memory and falsification of history. I think they had a Black Anne Boleyn or something like that.
Yes, they did.
Which is just hilarious in the magnitude of untruth, but quite nefarious in the fact that they're trying to reinvent a completely new history.
Yes.
This is what ends up rubbing people the wrong way, I suspect. That you're not only was there a political project to foist an experiment on the public that nobody asked for, but there is also the attempt to impose the narrative that it was always thus and it is good and you're a bigot for noticing.
You haven't seen Britain change in front of your eyes for decades.
No, you haven't.
No.
I mean, I came here 20 years ago and I noticed an insane change and a very extreme one, and it's not for the best. So this is what rubs people the wrong way. It's not, oh, well, this poor little child, and everybody's going to say, oh, you people are attacking a child. No, absolutely not. What's being discussed is a project to falsify history and to falsify reality, and to insist that the experiment was a success in the face of all of the evidence.
Also, I think fantasy fiction, and I don't know if Harry Potter technically counts as fantasy fiction, but it counts.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yes,
maybe not epic fantasy, but it counts as fantasy.
It is fantasy.
A lot of it is escapism. We want to read fantasy fiction, watch fantasy TV, fantasy series, because we can sort of escape the world around us, which contains stuff sometimes that we just don't like.
Right.
All this, the DI stuff in the genre, all this is doing is ruining the escapism thing.
Yes.
Because it's the forced nature of it.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And in a way, it's a deliberate, let me rub your nose in it.
Yeah. You are not allowed any sort of
Which
escape.
one of Blair's henchmen said that the objective was to rub the noses of the conservatives in diversity or something like that?
I can't remember. It might have been Jack Straw, but I might be misremembering.
It might have been Mandelson or somebody
Right,
like that.
okay.
I'm not sure. But there is definitely this element of, no, you don't get to buzz off and do something that you enjoy. And it happens in video games, and it happens in television, and everything that they can get their hands on. Yes, you're not allowed to escape. We're in control. We're in charge. We're going to impose this on you. And if it feels forced, it's because it is.
Absolutely. But one other thing that I think's worth considering is that you have to get into the mind, regrettably, of these HBO executives. I know it's a scary place, but you have to get you have to just go with it. Okay, you have to go with it. The thing is that as far as they're concerned, they are just going to look at Britain, go, wow, it's more diverse, 30 years on than when these original films were made. We just need to reflect modern Britain.
Yes.
We need to reflect Britain as it is now, and it's not fair to gatekeep all of these minorities out of this very, no, hang on. And you have to understand as well that fundamentally, even though we, as Europeans and as people who fundamentally want to reverse mass immigration, reverse the damage that it has done to our society, there is no reason on earth why we should expect some Hollywood executive not to think that the permanent demographic state of European countries is not going to be a permanent state of affairs. Right? Why would some Hollywood mogul ever think that 30 years from now, remigration is inevitable, or that, we're going to at least, stop the boats or just reverse the Boris wave, any of these sorts of things? They're not paying attention to that. They find it inconceivable. And the reason that they find it inconceivable is because it's totally contrary to their idea of progress. Because progress and diversity in their minds are inexplicably linked.
I don't understand why I would want a fantasy novel series to represent any modern state.
And the whole
or any modern culture. It's escapism. It's a story. It's That's it.
More than that, the purpose of art is to create something that is timeless. And so if what you're doing is merely replicate the present, that's not art, that's photography, which is not quite the same thing. So they don't have a notion of anything timeless or anything eternal, including the nation, including normalcy, including the family. These conceptions don't exist in their minds. What exists in their minds is just, current year. And what current year says is what you should always believe, and we are in the eternal year zero. That's the nature of the mindset that animates these kinds of decisions. So it's not, I like this actor, I don't like this actor. You can be of any race and be a wonderful actor, fine. But Ryan Gosling is not going to play Mandela. And it only goes one way, and that becomes jarring. I say this as a Mediterranean person. It's not. I fit in multiple cultures and multiple places. I don't care, but there is something when you, like, if you were poking black people constantly, I would find it annoying and insensitive, unnecessary. And if you were poking white people constantly, I would find it annoying, unnecessary, and just why are you doing this?
Right.
So that's what I think people find most insulting about this. There's no sense that this is something timeless. There's no sense that this is art. There's no sense that this is supposed to provide an escape. There's no respect for any kind of tradition. Every tradition must be diversified because this is what we must believe today, and these are the requirements of year zero. End of discussion.
And a story fundamentally cannot belong to a particular people, right?
That's the assumption.
Right.
Yes.
You see this with Harry Potter is a good example of this, but
you see this with Little Mermaid.
But Tolkien is an even better example.
Yes.
Because Tolkien fundamentally wrote The Lord of the Rings for the English people.
Yes.
Right? You can't have that. Tolkien has to become accessible to the entire world. It has to become accessible to universal audiences, and they think that the only way that can happen, despite the fact that Lord of the Rings was enormously successful all over the world on its own terms,
yes,
that the only way that can come to be is by making it look like the entire world. When in fact, what people, as I said at the beginning, loved about Harry Potter, the reason why, whenever you go to King's Cross Station, you've got all the Asian tourists over there, with the Gryffindor scarves and the robes and everything, pretending to go through the platform, is because they loved the Britishness of it.
Yes.
They loved the fact that it felt authentic,
yes,
that it didn't feel like a corporately decided decision-making process that currently follows, as you say, just modern fads and trends.
Yep.
Based on where we are at now. And so let's go to Snape. Because obviously, again, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, but I do know that Snape was regarded as one of the most complex, the most well-recognised characters of the series. And of course, he was given an extraordinarily memorable performance by Alan Rickman, the great Alan Rickman. And so even though I wasn't willing to dunk on a child earlier on, I am more than fair game at dunking on grown-ups and adults. So this is one of the things that I wanted to address, because when it comes to adult actors, then all of a sudden it becomes a question of, okay, you're not a child, you actually know whether or not a part was made with you in mind, or whether or not you're trying to break past a barrier here.
Yes.
That wasn't, and this is something that I've seen many comments online with a lot of people, those people saying, look, I'm not racist, it's just, this isn't what the character was envisaged as. This is, this is what, they're saying.
I think here's what comes to my mind. I think Jack Nicholson refused a role in The Godfather because he was of the opinion that it should go to an Italian actor. I'm not sure. I think it was The Godfather.
Right.
I think it was The Godfather. And so Jack Nicholson said, no, I'm Irish or whatever Jack Nicholson is, and this should actually go to an Italian actor. So these guys have been so marinated in this that, and they've been, like, Hollywood has been wokeish for a long time, and it's only peaked in recent years, but this has been going on for decades now. So these guys are marinated in this mindset. What frustrates people, understandably so, is when things go only one way. Again, there is never going to be a sort of white guy playing Nelson Mandela. It will never happen.
But if I could just delineate something on that point, to go to your Jack Nicholson example, you see, I personally would consider that to be unnecessary.
I agree.
Right? Because you can at least change your accent and have, you can characterize yourself as Italian, right? Whereas with something like, and we also don't want to fall into a trap with, because you get this a lot, because you have to bear in mind as well that the acting world, the theatre world, they see themselves as the vanguard of progress, right? These people genuinely think that they are the changes of the world.
The dreamers of dreams.
The dreamers of dreams. And the music men. Yeah. And fundamentally, they see just all of these barriers, So then when you get something like Shakespeare, it doesn't matter if Cassius in Julius Caesar is suddenly played by a woman. It doesn't matter if Hamlet, young, vital Hamlet, is played by an 80-year-old man. All these sorts of things. Like, all of a sudden, well, does any casting actually matter? Anymore? Does anything actually feel like it belongs or it should? Because it's obviously, to act is to visually, to represent something. And if you're not representing something convincingly, then, this is the case with him. Look, he might be a very talented actor, but does he visually look like the character as it was originally intended? No.
Does it allow you to slip into the world that was being created in those books?
Yes.
And to actually have an immersive experience without being constantly reminded that there is an agenda that is being imposed. And there's always the mistrust that comes with forced diversified acting, which is that once you know that this is imposed diversity, you will not trust it, because you will not trust that it was done in the same way. Any film by Morgan Freeman doesn't have that problem, because you know that Wesley Snipes, Morgan Freeman, whoever, these are great actors.
Like the Blade, it's we put him in the same category.
I mean, he's been in other films, whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter, because you trust that this is going to be whatever the role is. It's going to suit him.
Yes.
Whereas here, because it's forced, for all I know, this guy might turn out to be a great actor. For all I know, he might be wonderful. I mean, I'm never going to watch a Harry Potter film. I haven't done it, and I won't start. However, for all I know, he could be a great actor. But every time you look at it, you're going to be, is he really?
I know why you're there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it annoying.
Right. So if I'll just come towards the end of this then. So he actually ended up being one of the actors who signed an open letter supporting trans rights.
A Snape appearance, by the way.
Yeah, this is. After the British Supreme Court decided to just acknowledge reality and that men and women exist.
Didn't Snape wore necklaces and gold watches?
So is this basically J.K. Rowling being made to repent for being realistic about sex?
Well, here's the thing. So J.K. Rowling went on to say, in view of this, she said, I don't have the power to fire an actor from the series, and I wouldn't exercise it if I did. I don't believe in taking away people's jobs or livelihoods for holding legally protected beliefs that differ from mine. Absolutely fine, totally understandable, but I would just draw to the end on this particular point, which is that J.K. Rowling is probably the most famous TERF in the world, right?
Yep.
And the entire crux of her argument relies on the fact that, look, there is just something immutable about being born a woman.
Yes.
In the same way that there is a man. You are born it, and then based on that, you either are the thing or you are not.
Yes.
Why can she not do the same for a British person, right? All of a sudden, You know, like, so sex is this great immutable thing that can never be changed. But in this, look, JK, he's not British. I'm sorry, I know he was born here, but fundamentally, he's not British. And this is one of those things where I get very wound up with the TERFs, because they seem to only really care about things that personally affect them.
Yeah.
And she's not being considerate of the fact that in doing this, she is essentially bastardizing the vision of her own work.
Oh, she's an eternal liberal. She will always be a liberal.
Yes.
It won't change that, but it's just that there was one issue that she objected to, and that was it.
Exactly.
And good for her for objecting. But I think any kind of expectation from somebody in that world is just, don't expect anything from them.
Yes.
That's it.
So it's the Harry Potter series is going to come out. I'm very sorry if it ruins it for a lot of people. I won't be watching it for myself, but for those of you that do, let me know how it is.
We've been complaining about what appears to be the intentional degradation of our educational system for years now. If you went through the state school system in the UK, as I did, you will know exactly what I mean. Just listen to the man in the street interviews from the 1960s compared to those done now, and it is crystal clear that those people then have something that we don't have now. Put simply, we're being dumbed down by the powers that be on purpose, but we don't have to accept this perpetual lowering of standards. We are still a free people, and it's time to do something about it. This is why we have created courses.lotuseaters.com, a platform on which we are now offering courses which are tailor-made to reconstruct the education that has been denied to us. The first course we have available is Dr. Nima Parvini's Excellent Trivium, a tripartite course consisting of logic, grammar, and rhetoric, which is the foundation and backbone of a classical education. This course will make you a better writer, speaker, and thinker, and it used to be that every 12-year-old in the country would take it. Personally, I will be doing this course with my own children to ensure they get the benefits of it for their whole lives, but it's never too late to do it, and I really think you should. We will also be producing many other courses in the future on subjects which are not topics of idle interest, but which instead will level you up as a person and make you more effective in the real world. I want to be clear, these are not YouTube videos. They are university-level lectures and coursework with a test at the end to which you will have to apply yourself. In these, we are not offering you an easy life. We are offering you the foundations of what you will need to be a part of the ascent of our civilization out of the hole that was dug for us. They are not easy, but they are rewarding. They are an investment in yourself that will provide you with skills that you will use for the rest of your life. Courses.lotuseaters.com. We will see you there.